Oh, I have a story about this. My friend A had been with his girlfriend B for years, so he decided he wanted to propose. What he didn't know is that B was also thinking about proposing to him. A proposed first, and B freaked out because she had already said her proposal and bought a ring, so she said no. Over the next week, B freaked out more and more, and refused to answer A's calls and messages. A then decided to use the money he had saved up to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned out to be a year-long trip around the world. One day, A says that he's coming back and B decides to go and wait for him at the airport and propose to him there. It turns out that while being in Peru, A met a girl and they fell in love almost immediately, and got married in Peru. 5 years later, A and his Peruvian wife are still happily married and recently had a baby, while B hasn't still quite forgiven herself for ruining her relationship with A.
We were living together. I asked, she said, "No, I love you but I need to think about it. I don't think I'm ready yet. Can you give me some time and ask later?" A few months go by, I ask again, same response. A few more months, same deal. A couple more weeks and then she says, "Hey, what do you think of us getting married?" I replied, "That's an excellent idea, why didn't I think of that? Our 39th anniversary is next month."
She had said she wasn't really a fan of marriage, so I thought proposing non-marriage might be well received, and I wanted us to be together for the rest of our lives. So I asked her not to marry me. She said no. We have been married for 10 years.
Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said, "I don't know." A couple months later I asked her again, she said, "Maybe." I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there really.
We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married, have 3 children, and are both still very much in love.
It was really bad for a while. Then it was really bad. Then it became really bad. Then it became bad. Then it was just blah. Then it was neutral. Then things started to get better. They continued to get better by me learning to be happy and me doing me things. I eventually found someone else, and things have been getting better for 20 years now.
I asked her right out of high school, but she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together. Got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up.
She said yes as I had a special occasion planned, one of those observation wheels, and I proposed at the very top and we were in our way to a family event and I had a ring made and everything. Then a few days later she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while but it was long distance, other side of the world. When I visited it would be super awkward. Eventually Dad kicked me out. Was flying standby and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. Now I am happily married and am glad it never worked out. I was not in a good place when I met her and her family were super controlling. It would never have worked. The woman I married is super cool and is my best friend. Turned out better than expected.
She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no, and over time we grew apart. Haven't talked to her in 15 years, don't know if she died.
My mother turned my father down, but didn't outright break up with him. She just wasn't sure about the marriage idea, she valued her independence and was nervous about commitment. No hard feelings, though. He called up the next day when she'd had more time to think about it, and she said yes after all. They celebrated 32 years of marriage last month.
Very first girlfriend ever. Started dating at 17. After 6 years of dating I proposed. She said, "No, I'm sorry." I asked why. She said, "I've been thinking about this for a while but didn't talk to you about it. I found someone else." Then she broke up with me right then and there. I asked if she cheated and she said no. We're just friends right now. But he makes me happy when I'm with him and you just don't. You used to. But not anymore. I tried sabotaging their relationship when I found him begging her for nudes, tattled to her ultra-Christian parents that he was twice her age, which he is, and did everything I could to be the insane one. Finally realized what I was doing, apologized, promised to never talk to her or her family ever again. I sold the ring and used the money to buy a guitar and a boatload of weed and spiraled out of control for 3 years. Flunked all my classes, got a dead-end job at a construction gig, slowly descended into borderline alcoholism. Couldn't leave the house or go to work or do my job without being high. Gained a ton of weight, let myself go. Finally contemplated suicide, planned it out with a 20-page instruction manual on how to make it painless, not screw it up, and not hurt anyone in the process. Never went through with it because I kept getting scared and spending my suicide fund on weed and alcohol. Finally broke down and told my parents all of this. Asked for help. Spent another year in a rehab program with a therapist. Got out and have been clean for 3 years by this September and still wake up at 3 a.m. feeling sick every couple of months for the way I treated her after having spent 6 years telling her that I loved her. But that's all over, now, and all I can do is learn from it, promise to be better, and keep going. So now I'm turning 29 in a week, still living at home with parents, and constantly battling self-loathing and anxiety while working a job for $9.25 an hour. But I pay my parents $300 per month to stay with them, and I'm going back to school. Taking the minimum number of credit hours per semester since I'm paying for it out of pocket, and I work full-time and overtime when I can get it, but slowly dragged my GPA from a 1.28 to a 2.64 and can start getting help next semester instead of paying for all of it out of pocket, now. I also lost a ton of weight during the pandemic and weigh just 189. Now, in rehab I dropped to 220, but I was closer to 245 to 250 before that. Safe to say I won't be worth dating for a long time, but maybe when I get my degree under my belt and finish growing and learning, I can get a self-sustaining job, I can move out and truly start over.
I was the person who said no. We had only known each other for 3 months and he was smitten. I was more cautious. I said no, I like you but it's way too soon. He asked when would be enough time, I said maybe a year. He proposed again at midnight, 1 year after we first met. I said yes, and we have been together 8 years now.
This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no, several times. One day my dad asked my mom to marry him, yet again. She said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama.
My mom rejected my father the first 2 times. There was no real hard feelings between them. I guess my mother was just not ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog out into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice shouting, "Honey, the dog is asking me to marry him." Cue absolute hysterics. My dad said yes to the proposal. My human dad and my human mom are still married 2 decades later.
My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did it. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker and they've been married 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he never would have gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life. But it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. My dad talks to her sometimes. She got married to someone else and they had a son who died from a medical condition.
So this actor, Patrick Moot, proposes to his girlfriend at a basketball game and gets turned down, while on the giant jumbotron. Clip goes on YouTube. She tells him later that she turned him down because she thinks his dick is too small. So he travels around the world, documenting what other cultures think about penis size and penis enlargement, and made a movie about it called Unhung Hero. I've never watched it, but the title alone makes me laugh.
My mom actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger. Not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And then when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mom plucked up the courage and asked him. Just to get her back after all those years, he said no before taking her up on the offer a few days later. He died a happy man.
I was a young Marine. I was only home during the weekends. Was dating this girl for about a year from my hometown. When I asked, she said yes. Her dad, former Navy, kept saying we should wait. We put it off for a bit longer. Fast forward another year. She dumped me. Father informs me she has been sleeping with a lot of guys, like more than 50 over the 2 years we dated. And was very happy I didn't marry her. And apologizes to me for her behavior. She then totally ghosting everyone including her family for about 6 months. Find out she moved 7 hours away and was living under a house, not a basement. Under a house with her new BF. She calls her mom to come get her. Mother and father ask me to go get her and bring her home. Good times, good times.
Not sure if this count, but I proposed. She said yes, but 1 month before the wedding she took it back. This is what happened immediately with my life. I personally lost about $3,000 worth of deposits. My parents and her parents lost about $4,000 each on deposits. Me and my parents are working class, so it took years for us to financially recover from this. I spent $2,200 on a ring I didn't want. My biggest regret, and will say this anyone who listens, the engagement ring chain I bought it from wouldn't take it back. I took it to pawn shops and they'd only offer a few hundred. This engagement ring store bank on customers who wants the whole ring, stone, band, setting. If you're going to buy a ring, just buy the stone, a gold band setting. You can get a better deal from a local jewelry store. Apparently my gem I bought was shit. Most of the cost of the ring was BS. Most of my family was from out of state and a lot of people were pissed because they canceled their flight. I had to go to the so I didn't leave my room. I couldn't take any calls because everyone was pissed and I didn't want to hear it. I was depressed and just stayed in bed. One day my roommate grabbed me and took me to the where the doctor treated me for severe dehydration and an infection. What happened when I got over it? I became stronger for it. I didn't propose to anyone until a decade later. Honestly, there wasn't anyone that I didn't love deeply enough to be in a committed relationship. But when I proposed, I was in my 30s. Our relationship was more mature than my first time I proposed. We're now married for 13 years. She's my best friend. When I have good news, she's the first person I want to tell it to. When I have bad news, she's the first person I want to tell it to. I financially recovered as well. I learned my lesson about the engagement ring. Only paid $300 for it. She loved it and treasures it. After our 10-year milestone, we were doing so well, I told her to pick a wedding ring of any cost. She refused. She still wears that cheap $300 ring and loves it.
I spoke to her about it beforehand, and she seemed really keen on the idea. So I decided to propose about a week after. In front of all our friends, she was so shocked she picked me up off my knee and shooed me away. Most of our friends were confused, because everyone knew it was going to happen, and she said she was excited for it. I didn't know what to do. It was all really embarrassing, and later she explained she didn't mean no, she just didn't know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and just this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary.
In 2017, Google came up with this idea to allow you to make photo books out of your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years, and I knew she was the one I wanted to marry, so I created this wonderful photo book of all of our selfies together and ended it with a page made out of a photo I generated that said, "Will you marry me?" I then proceeded to put all these things into an album and build the photo book. What didn't occur to me at the time was that the album I put these in was a shared album, and the other person gets a notification when you add new photos to it. And the other person that the album was shared with, my girlfriend. That evening, we had dinner and it all came out. She saw the photo. She wasn't ready. There were a few reasons why, but they were good reasons and smart reasons, mostly to do with timing, family, and finances. We weren't breaking up, we just weren't getting engaged at that time. A year later, we have fully discussed the concept of getting married. We went ring shopping, she picked her own ring, and by the time I actually did propose, we both knew what her answer would be. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked out so far. And the photo book is on a shelf to my left as we speak.
We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment we were stressed, both of us, with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated to us the letter badly, telling us that even presenting the documents, they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked. Looking for some more help, we ended in the city hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice. If we get married, could we stop the deportation? I asked to the poor guy in the information office. I can't remember if he gave us an answer. I want to marry her. Will you marry me? She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, "Well, thank you, but let's wait a bit." After the weekend, we went to immigration office and the people there explained which documents were missing, how to get them. She wasn't denied the visa and we kept living in the way we planned. It was intense and, in retrospective, really funny.
My mom told my dad no when he proposed to her even though they were already living together. She thought he was impotent and it wasn't until she got pregnant that she said yes. In retrospect, I wish my parents had decided early in their relationship that they can barely stand each other.
My husband asked 3 times in the span of a couple months. We had dated for 3 years. He was ready, I wanted to graduate college first. Also, don't propose by handing your a ring while you're both in the car on the way to Burger King. I'm low maintenance, but put some thought into it. Thanks for watching Reddit with Husky. Hit the subscribe button for more video and let me know in the comment whether you will break up after she said no.